Okay.
Okay.
So welcome to today's session. My name's Sarah Potter and I'm the founder and director of Peer Genius. So today's innovation lab is all around mental toughness. So something that we're probably all thinking that we really need at the moment. So housekeeping for today, just to eliminate that background noise, if you can pop yourselves on mute. But don't let that hinder you from joining us today. So put all those great questions to our panel of experts today into the chat box and we'll come through to you. So thanks very much for that, Erica. It's going to be really interactive today. So we're really lucky to have digital learning specialists joined with us today. So you'll see how brilliant the slides are for today and the delivery of today's session as well. So no pressure, Sam and Erica. I'm sure that you'll absolutely deliver, no doubt. The reason why I work with Erica as well from Welcome To, so she's one of our accredited partners for Peer Genius, is due to the digital learning training that she does deliver, is engaging, is fit for purpose and is really interactive. So Erica Farmer isn't someone that's pivoted her business to go online during COVID. It's something that she has been doing, and like Sam, who's on the panel today as well, they have been doing this for sort of almost 10 years in that L&D digital learning space. So really lucky to be working with them as well. So they are your experts. And we've got a really nice case study as well today. So it's not just about how we do it in theory, it's about actually, we've got a HR director, so a peer to you. That's come through the other end, that's going to share their challenges, lessons learned and the impact to the business, which I think is most important. And when we talk about mental toughness as well, I've actually been through the assessment myself. And it was really helpful for me to really take that time, take that step away to really reflect. And I think we all think, oh, we're fine, we've just got to cope. But actually, how do we cope? And it's not until you have that time for yourself and to really reflect on, it's not just the stresses, the pressure that we're going through, it's also about the opportunities and how do we really ensure that we're present. So when HR, obviously we know we are the go-to place, so how do we really be that role model for the organisation, for the senior leadership team, to actually know that we've got this and we are strong. And I know through conversations that I have with HR directors, we do seem to be those swans. So we are graceful and we are elegant on the outside, but we are sort of treading water underneath. So for me, this programme just really brought that to life, to say, actually, we don't have to be alone. We have got the support and this is what it really looks like. So for me, it's a really turning point to go, actually, what Erica and Sam have really developed really has that impact. So as a profession, we can really be those role models to give to our organisations, but we can only do that once we've got our own oxygen masks on. And we talk about that a lot, but actually there's some really good tools, techniques and a really good toolkit that Sam's developed about how we can make sure we're well in ourselves. And obviously Andy from Bostic's going through this as well at the moment and rolling out to his organisation, so he really sees that value in it. So really excited to bring that to you today. So enough from me. I'll hand over to Erica for some introductions. And like I said, this is your time. So you're our invested. So make sure you get the most out of it. And then fire your questions over to us. And I'll send this recording over to you this afternoon as well. So enjoy your coffee and over to you, Erica.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Hi, everybody. Fantastic to see those regular faces. Really pleased to be bringing this innovation lab with you guys today. We've done quite a few now, actually, haven't we? So it's really exciting that people are still interested to listen to us talk about how we can support. We haven't burnt it too much yet. So it's great, and I'm really pleased to be joining Samantha Sloan, who I partner with. We're partner organisations, particularly in this coaching space, and I'll hand over to Sam very shortly for an introduction. Yeah, we bring to you the concept of mental toughness today, and we'd like to talk about mental toughness is really how we as individuals deal with the pressure and stress and strain of what comes to us on a day-to-day basis, how we think about it, how we how our behaviours start to drive by the way we think about what's going on for us at the time. and how that drives the language, how that drives the actions, how that drives our beliefs and everything that's going on for us. So the way I like to talk about mental toughness is it's something bigger than resilience. We talk about resilience quite a lot, and resilience for a lot of people is, how do we bounce back? We often hear about it as bounce back ability. So what happens to us when the train hits us, for example? How do we get back up? How do we brush ourselves off and get on with what's happened? And how do we do that quickly in an emotionally intelligent way? The way we look at mental toughness is, why do we wait for the train to come down the tracks? Why do we wait for the train to hit us? What can we do in advance? How can we understand our thinking, our metacognition, our thinking process before that train hits us? What strategies and coping mechanisms can we put in the way? And that's exactly the context of what we're going to talk to you guys about today. So, for those guys who I don't know, I know most of you on the call, so fantastic again to see lots of lovely names and faces. But my name's Erica Farmer. As Sarah's talked about, I'm a digital learning consultant. I've had 20 years in corporate learning and development with some of the biggest brands in the UK. I'm an online facilitator. I've been delivering online sessions since 2012. We were running in interactive webinars in LV. And I am recently introduced to this concept of mental toughness, which is why I'm so excited and passionate about it. I've got a real fire in my belly about mental toughness at the moment. So those of you who I'm linked in with, you probably would have seen me gushing about it a little bit online. I'm also a licensed user training practitioner. So there's an MTQ plus assessment, psychometric assessment, that measures mental toughness in individuals, and we'll talk to you guys a bit more about that as we go through. I'm currently pending my qualification for the European Mentoring Counselling EMCC, which is all very exciting. One of the big names in coaching and mentoring, that again we'll talk a bit more to you guys about that later. And I live in Cullumpton in Devon with my two little pugs, Pepper and Daisy. I'm going to hand you over to Sam now for an introduction, and then we'll get into it. Any questions or queries, guys, do pop them in the chat box. Over to you, Sam.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Erica. You can very probably tell just how passionate Erica is about this mental toughness proposition that we have been working on together. I kind of started this journey about three and a half years ago, to be honest, when I had all of this stuff and all of this experience in my head, and that's why I decided to write Coaching with Purpose. But then I came across beautifully, kind of succinctly, the mental toughness concept, and it just works beautifully with a coaching slant to it. And you'll see as we move through the program today exactly how it is that we do that. My background, I've got a retail manager background of 22 years ish, there or thereabouts. Biggest team I led was 84 people. So I've got the t-shirt when it comes to people management. But then I've been in L&D, corporate world. I joined Barclays back in 2007, and I ended up heading Premier Banking's training team. And I spent 7 wonderful years with Barclays. And then, of course, I set up 123 people development. And then, like I've said, I've been developing programs ever since for wonderful people like yourselves. Instructional designer as well, but online facilitation, goodness me, I'm rather glad I did the qualification 10 years ago, because it's really set me up. And I've been super busy, as Erica has been as well, during lockdown, which has been fantastic. So we develop really highly interactive programs as well. I'm also a licensed user practitioner of the MTQ Plus also, but I'm a senior practitioner with the EMCC. So I also do executive coaching, etc., and all of that. And I live in Manchester, so a little bit further north than Erica as well. Bit colder up here, we seem to find, when we chat regularly. So that's a little bit about me. So I'm going to hand back over to Erica. Erica's going to talk us through the mental toughness concept initially, and then she'll hand back to me, who I will then talk through some of the psychometrics in a little bit more detail.
Great, thanks. And again, any questions or queries, do pop them in the chat for us. We want to make this interactive as possible. We will be covering mental toughness, as we talked about. We'll be covering a program which we deliver, and Sam heads up a fantastic program. If you've been coaching for years, if you're brand new to coaching, called Coaching with Purpose, happy to send some further information out around that. Very interesting, accredited program by the EMCC. And as you can see, it gives you the EQA EIA Foundation Award in Coaching coaching and mentoring. So a lot of people tend to kind of go to the ILM, which is no problems with that. This is a different opportunity, and we use the mental toughness framework within our coaching. So it kind of delves a different level down. So what do we mean by mental toughness? So let's get the old individual specific descriptor coming out there. So personality trait. So we're still talking about personality, but a specific personality trait. So it's about our inbuilt, it's about who we are as people, and it's about how we respond mentally, like we talked about earlier. What's that behavior? What's that thinking process? Where are those actions coming from? So when you see people behave under stress in different ways, we can measure that in the terms of the MTQ+. That's our mental toughness, our grit, it used to be called, our hardiness, coupled with something called positive psychology. That's what's being tested under these difficult times. And that's what's coming together as mental toughness. And it's around how we respond to pressure and stresses and challenges, irrespective of the situation. So again, we've all got those specific things that press our buttons and we go into that fight or flight. But actually, what is it going on? Metacognition, what's going inside our brain? And you might start to think, and I want you to think about this as we go through the session, when you're under pressure or stress, how do you respond? What are you aware of that happens to you, and what behaviors do you start to explore? They might be emotional, they might be commitment focused, they might be around how you achieve something. Something will start to come into play to you, and when you're under stress, and by gosh, has this community been under a lot of stress over the last year. So I'd like you to go to the chat box for this next exercise. So if you haven't brought your chat box up, it's just on the toolbar at the bottom. You've got a little icon that says chat that's got your speech bubble. Just bring up the chat box, and in the chat box, I'd like to hear from you. What are the most important aspects for you guys as HR practitioners in your organizations at the moment? Just pop it in the chat for me. What strategic things are important and are on your mind at this point? Just pop it in the chat box for us. Okay, so Kirsty says culture, well-being, engagement. Thanks for kicking us off, Kirsty. Absolutely. What else? Sarah says well-being. Jennifer says well-being. Michelle says culture remotely. Interesting. Lisa says health and well-being. Absolutely. Lisa, I know you've been doing a lot of stuff around that. Garanka says well-being. Jennifer says supporting people with remote working and stress. Isn't that funny? Desmond says costs. Yeah, we've still got to keep that commercial eye on what's happening. Lisa says leadership development. Heidi says well-being and especially supporting mental health. Dee says engagement. Sarah says communication and engagement. Let's keep this rolling. What else is important for you guys? Rolly says remote working and engagement, but also performance. Yeah, we can't just kind of say it's just a tough time. We can forgive everybody at the moment. We don't have a company to run. Rolly, I think that's a great shout. What else is important for you guys at the moment? Or people that you're talking to, if it doesn't affect you directly, what else? What kind of things? Doing more with less, Claire says. Absolutely. Isn't that always the challenge? For sure. Absolutely. And interestingly, and we'll present to you some case studies. Andy says comms, performance, connections. Kirsty says equality, performance. Being overwhelmed, Jennifer says, or people feeling overwhelmed. That's a really good one, Jennifer. I think there's a lot of people in that boat at the moment. Effect on relationships, Dee says. Yeah, there's just a lot going on for us, but there's some clear buckets that I think you guys have pretty much picked out there. And actually what you'll find is mental toughness can help us, or the measurement of mental toughness and the interventions that support us can have the following mechanisms. It can impact performance, for example. So some of the case studies that have been done around mental toughness in particular in educational settings talks about those people or those students who are classed as mentally tough versus those students who are mentally sensitive. So we don't say mentally weak, we see mentally sensitive. We saw there was a 25% variation just through mental toughness. Things like, this is a really hard piece of work, so I see that as a challenge and I'm going to have a go at it, and I'm going to really bring in my internal strategies to help me do that, versus I can't do this, it's too much, I can't deal with it. You know, we're seeing kind of changes around that. We're seeing things like agility, mental agility. So growth mindset, I'm having to adopt these positive behaviors. What can I do to make this happen? How can I take accountability of either my life, my role, what's happening in the business? Easier said than done, but that's where we get into this mindset, this fixed versus growth mindset. And all of the stuff that we talk about at the moment, particularly in the terms of mental toughness, is underpinned by emotional intelligence and self-awareness, which we talk a lot about within the corporate world, certainly in the L&D world, but we need to understand how we behave over certain things. And mental toughness is a core personality trait that we can measure and work on that supports us. A lot of you guys also said well-being, and I'm not surprised to see that. How are people feeling? What's going on for people at the moment? And there's a huge scale around that at the moment as well, isn't there, around how people are feeling mentally, physically, financially. It's a big topic, well-being. We've talked about that on previous Peer Genius webinars as well. So, how can my mental toughness support my well-being? And that's a question out to you guys as well, based on what you know on mental toughness so far. In the chat box, how do you think mental toughness can support our well-being, or well-being of the teams or the staff or the workforce that we're working with? What's the correlation there, do you think? Just pop it in the chat for me. How can being mentally tough or working on your mental toughness support well-being, do you think?
I hear a lot of imposter syndrome
Okay.
through. So I think if we knew that we're like well in ourselves and able to deliver, that will sort of help not doubt our ability as well. And to use that, like those pressures and stresses in a positive way as well.
I agree, Sarah. Thank you for kicking us off. Absolutely. You're absolutely in the right space. So Kirsty says sensitivity, resilience, connections. Michelle says dealing with the volume of rocks being thrown at me. Yeah, absolutely. And how am I bashing those rocks away rather than letting them hit me? And what impact is that having if I'm getting into this spiral of doom and I'm feeling really bad about stuff rather than feeling really positive about stuff? Sarah says building relationships as well. That's been tested in this virtual world. So how does mental toughness support us with that? Deborah says giving the confidence to cope. How are we feeling about our achievements? How are we feeling about how we, are we feeling in control of certain things at the moment? Or can we feel in control of certain things at the moment? Sarah says resilience when dealing with the unknown while leading and empowering others. I love that, Sarah. And Jennifer says self-care. It's, Sarah and I often talk about, Sam and I often talk about, putting on your oxygen mask before helping others to put on theirs. Having that position where you can deal with things, you've got that metacognition, that way of coping under stress, and you've identified the element of your personality that you might need to work on a little bit, or you might think, actually, I'm okay with that. Or, what does that mean if I have some coaching in a certain area that could support me there as well? Heidi says trying to remain grounded while spinning lots of plates. I agree with Sarah around imposter syndrome too. We're hearing a lot about imposter syndrome. Thank you so much for that. But also we're seeing mental toughness and supporting where we are on that scale can also help with our aspirations. It can also, going back to that growth mindset, what is it that you're looking to achieve? How can you do that? How can you support others? You talked about empowerment in the chat there. And mental toughness can support you with all of these interventions. And we're going to share with you the Bostic case study with Andy going through the coaching program, but also the Yodel case study, where we've got direct correlation and links around an increase in everything we've just talked about, particularly productivity, that came up earlier, performance, and mental toughness. But how do you think when something happens? What's going on for you? Just pop that in the chat for me again. What's going on for you? There's something coming down the road and you think, oh God, this is going to hit me. I need to be able to deal with this. What's going on for you in your brain? Just pop that in the chat for me. Let's get some thoughts around this. Go on, Sarah.
From what I see as well, even when things are going good, we doubt that. Going, we're not used to this with things going so good. So I think even when things aren't bad, when things are going good, we don't believe it because we're not used to dealing with the good either. So it'd be interesting to see how other people feel as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe that links back to that imposter syndrome again, that confidence, and also your self-awareness that sits around that. You're actually better than what you think you are sometimes. We catastrophize. Oh God, what's going to happen? Tracy says, I'm worried if I've missed something. Michelle says 101 potential outcomes. Think, overthinking. Definitely. I think we're all probably in that space. Kirsty says planning, figuring it out. What have I missed? Heidi says, what can I do to help? Where, when? Do I need to ask for help? Heidi, I think that's a great shout. What help do I need? Where am I at the moment before I can start helping others? Claire says lots of things popping in and out of my head. You know, my emotions might start to go out of control. I might kind of be upset, or I might be angry or frustrated about something. And how do I manage that from that sense? Claire says disturbed sleep. You've got all of these thoughts going on in your head. And actually that can affect the way that you're going about your day-to-day. It can affect your behavior. So if you think about in business, if you're working with those senior stakeholders, working with project managers, working with your team, they'll be looking to you as a role model, certainly looking to HR at the moment to understand what's going on, you know, and actually looking to you for those behaviors that instill confidence in other people, that looking to you for initiatives around well-being and productivity and supporting the workforce. And actually, we know that we can behave in any particular way when under stress and when these things happen, but it's the visible behavior that people start to see, and that's driven by what's going on in the inside for you. But we know things like understanding yourself better, self-awareness, emotional intelligence, mental toughness can start to unlock some of this stuff. This understanding people, where do you want to be in terms of your aspirations? How are you feeling about yourself right now? What's going on for you? This mental toughness will start to explain this. And I quite openly share that when I did the MTQ class for the first time, I read it and I thought, oh, that's a bit pokey. I can feel a metaphorical poke in the ribs there, because there was something in my profile that I'd never seen before. And it came up as a, you know, you might need to consider this when you're behaving in this way under this kind of stressor. You might need to think about the impact that that has on yourself and other people when you're feeling under the cosh. And for the first time, under all of the psychometrics that I'd done in the past, whether that's Myers-Briggs, DISC, Insights, whatever you want to do, this was the first time I'd read this on this psychometric. And I thought, you know what, that's really, really interesting, because it explains quite a lot of things to me.
Can I just say something there, Erica, as well? I think it's really easy that we feel alone as well, and we don't know where to turn or who to speak to. And it's like you can see so much on social media, on LinkedIn, that everyone's, oh, look what I'm achieving. Aren't I doing great with my organisations winning these awards? So it can feel quite isolating as well to say, actually, who do I go to? Because I don't think we talk about this openly enough as a community that have been really up against it, and where do we go for that support as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to hand you over to Sam in just a minute around, let's start to break that down and understand what does that mean for us as individuals, because looking inwards, that's where the key to this is. It's easy for us to look outwards and blame things sometimes, and we all do that. It's my boss, it's my partner, it's what's going on at work, it's COVID, it's this, it's that. And yes, all of that stuff's happening, but this is around that real introspective look in the mirror. But it is so much more than resilience. So again, in the chat, what do you think the difference is based on what we've covered so far around that mental toughness and the resilience? What's the difference? Because we invest a lot of stuff around resilience training at the moment, but what have you heard so far that kind of piques interest to you, or what's the difference that we've talked about? Just pop it in the chat for me. I'll just give a couple of seconds for people to have a think. Yeah, coping mechanisms, Claire says, absolutely. What else? Michelle says mental toughness feels proactive to me and resilience is reactive. I love that, Michelle. I think you've summarized that really, really nicely. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, big thumbs up from Sam as well. Absolutely. I think you're right. I think that's exactly what the difference is. And resilience sits within mental toughness, but it sits in it in a quarter which combines it with that positive psychology. How can I be flourishing rather than languishing? I don't just want to be okay and then I go to the doctors because I'm languishing, I'm not feeling very well, go back to okay again. I'm languishing, don't feel very well, go back to, this is around how do we get to flourishing? How do we get to the other end of the scale? So again, this is so much more than just resilience. Kirsty says the ability to cope and the levels within it, absolutely. Rachel says mental toughness feels more holistic than resilience. I think that's a great shout as well. It addresses the whole system. It addresses the way you think rather than just the way you respond in the moment. And that's the difference here. So thank you so much for your interactivities there. Mark says survive versus prosper. I think that's another way of looking at it, Mark, so thank you. So we're going to start to drill down in regards to exactly what do we mean by mental toughness. I'm going to hand you over to Sam now, and Sam's going to take you through what we call the 4 C's and how the Coaching with Purpose program or having coaching interventions can support you when you start to understand the impact of this stuff. Over to you, Sam.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Erica. Brilliant stuff there. And, you know, that survive versus prosper really sums it up, to be perfectly honest. You know, are we going to fail because of what's going on, or are we going to actually succeed in spite of? And this is all about getting us in the right place to take us forwards and that future think and get us right and ready for the world to get back to some form of normality, I suppose, whatever that's going to look like going forwards. So Erica's going to forward the slides on, which is very odd for me because I'm normally the host. So let's just take a very, very quick peek into the 4 C's. So this is kind of like lifting the bonnet of the car up. Let's have a look at what's going on under the engine, etc. So these are the 4 C's. But as you can probably see here from the slide, they are broken down into from those 4 sections into 2 additional subsections. Now, as I go through, we'll just literally have a quick peek into each. Please feel free, as I'm kind of talking through these, to pop things into chat. You know, you might start to recognize some of these behaviors, something that's maybe happening to you, or of course with other people around you as well. Because as we start to go through each of these, I've just given a couple of examples that sits under each just to kind of bring it to life. But again, please feel free. So like I say, pop any comments, etc. into chat just as we talk through this. So next slide, please, Erica. And I detest saying that.
We're going to do a number 10 Downing Street, aren't we? Next slide, please. Next slide.
Yes, let's do a bit of Downing Street going on. Absolutely. Okay, so the first element that we're going to have a look at is control. Now, just as you guys were talking there and popping things into chat, it was quite interesting, some of the things that kind of came up here. Because when we look at the first 2 elements of this, life control and emotional control, a lot of the emotional control that we've just kind of spoke through there about that self-care, etc. How do we respond? What goes on for us? How does that then manifest itself into our behaviours? What's the knock-on effect maybe to our partners, for instance, or maybe even relationships at work, or the relationship with ourselves, never mind anybody else around us. So if you could just go to the next one for me, I'll just give some examples here. So somebody with a strong sense of life control, they believe that they can make a difference. They're in control of their own destiny. Do you know, though, in March, something happened that within our lifetimes never happened before. So we have no specific control over that. But the people that have thrived around this situation are people that have thought, hang on a minute, okay, this has happened. We're back to that Covey circle of influence, circle of control. What can I influence and what can I make a difference in here? And they see the solution rather than the problem. They've taken control of their own destiny. However, somebody with a low sense of life control believe things happen to them. They'll kind of see the train coming at them and they'll let it hit them because they don't want to take, or they don't feel able to take, avoiding action, for instance. So they, to some degree, tend to wait for that train or that boulder to hit them. They're maybe not necessarily aware of the part in which that they play in that. They may not see that actually whatever my behavior X, Y, and Z is actually contributing to that train. What is it that I could actually do to get myself ready for these situations that are come up and that's going to happen to me? Life happens. Take away COVID. I call it the roller coaster. Life was happening anyway. There's all sorts of stuff that will always happen to us throughout our lives. And I have no doubt every single person on this call today has a story to tell. Well, Erica's just mentioned there one really key aspect, and that's self-awareness. So somebody with a strong sense of life control will start to think, actually, when that happened to me last time, and this is actually going to link into one of the additional forces that we're going to have a look at, what have I learned from that? And I'm going to take control of that situation going forwards to get a different outcome. Emotional control. This is always a really interesting one, and we're going to have a look at the STEM report again just briefly in just a few moments. So somebody with a strong sense of emotional control, they have high levels of self-awareness. They recognize, a little bit like what Erica mentioned before, actually, when she looked at her report, she recognized actually within that there was an element that could potentially be impacting other areas maybe of her life or of other people. And this can go for anybody. I would say exactly the same when I read my own report as well. And it's that metacognition piece. Where is this coming from? Why am I thinking this? Why am I responding like this? And that's where you then start to stop blowing up and responding and reacting, going into that fight or flight that we know that doesn't help us, and it switches off our critical thinking. Actually, then we are far more likely to stay calm in a crisis. So when we see the train hitting, we can think, actually, hang on a minute, what choices and options do I have here to avoid this? Because we're thinking more rationally. Somebody with a low sense of emotional control, then, well, they can be affected by the mood of people around them. They can potentially really feel that, and that can bring them down, which again, as we well know, everybody was talking about well-being just a moment ago, that can be a very, very slippery slope. And if you're affected by people around you to that degree, then that's going to have an impact on your well-being. And these people who have a low sense of emotional control can go quite sulky as well. So again, you're very probably sitting there, I probably know somebody like that, our Fred's like that, or our Joe's like that, or whoever it is. You're very probably recognizing these types of behaviors maybe within yourself, or of course within others around you as well. And this isn't just at home, this is work, this is life, because this is all about us as human beings. Next slide, please. I think you're already preempting anyway. Okay, so the next one that we're just going to have a very quick look at under that bonnet as well is commitment. And there's two elements here. There's achievement orientation, how focused are we and how driven, and also goal orientated. Now, if we've got a sales, I've got a sales background, and I can remember delivering training to individuals that I now know were more maybe sensitive on that element of goals orientated. They used to really struggle. So if you just move to the next slide for me, we'll just have a look at, again, people that are high goal in orientation. They like working to goals and targets. That's actually a source of drive for them. It motivates them. It's that next challenge. But again, you'll start to see the correlation as we flick between each of them in just a few moments and how the interplay starts to work in as well. So people with a low goal orientation, sometimes they can feel quite threatened. Failure might expose them as failures. None of us as human beings like to feel like that. But where's that coming from? Where's that behavior? Where's that thought stemming from? Mental toughness, it's almost like an X-ray. When you get that report back, it gives you that opportunity to have a look at what's going on inside. And as a coach, you've got a great opportunity there for that coaching intervention to really start to drill down, where's that coming from and why is that happening? Low orientation, like I've just said there, goals, targets, exams, tests, they feel really intimidated. That actually could become a barrier to them succeeding, for instance. So if we look at achievement orientation, those are high in achievement orientation. They tend to remain focused. They concentrate, who's working from home? Just raise your hand if you're working from home at the moment. I think the vast majority of us have been working from home. How do we stay focused and stay concentrating when we sit in front of a screen for maybe 12, 13 hours a day? Well, the individuals that are slightly more mentally tough are able to do that, and they will monitor their own motivation levels. And of course, they're very good at engaging others as well. Those in low achievement orientation, though, they procrastinate. So how many of you are getting up to make a cup of tea every half an hour, or going to get another biscuit, or just pop in the garden, just go and check this, or I'll just tidy out this drawer, or let's just answer that email from last week? Whatever, we procrastinate. So when we're low or more mentally sensitive, we're more likely to do these types of things because we're not necessarily self-aware of our part that we're playing, maybe in not being quite so focused, shall we say, and self-sabotage as well, to get out of doing something. I'll do it bad in the first place, and then nobody will ask me to do that again. We then move into challenge. And this is where we start to look at risk orientation. So you're very probably starting to see the correlations here and learning orientation. So think back to what I said about that emotional control, for instance. If we're beginning to start to recognize, actually, I've tried that in the past, it hasn't worked. I'm learning from my experiences and I'm changing. Because if we always do what we've always done, we'll always get what we've always got. So that learning orientation is really important here. So let's just have a look at these. Somebody with a strong sort of sense of risk orientation. It doesn't mean that you take uncalculated risks. It means actually that you're thinking and considering the outcomes. So you'll provoke change. So again, you think within your organizations. I've never worked in an organization yet where change has never happened. It's a completely changing landscape. At the moment, it's changing daily. Well, actually, somebody that's a little bit more mentally tough will see those opportunities like we mentioned before. And they like to stretch themselves. They like to do that, but in a considered way. And when we come to the STEM report in just a few moments, you'll see actually how, again, these will all start to correlate. So somebody with a low sense prefers that safe, secure world, well within their comfort zones. They won't take that risk because, oh my God, that might, something might go wrong there. I don't want to take that chance. So they'll kind of stay within that little bubble. But then we move into learning orientation, strong sense. They enjoy trying things. They enjoy testing out things. During lockdown, I'd never used Zoom. When since March as a host, I got asked to do an upskilling on Zoom to 15 individuals. I'd never done it. 20 minutes on YouTube, cracked it. By the end of that day, I'd upskilled 15 people. Let's give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? You just have a go, don't you? Keen to apply new things, try things. I'm not afraid of new situations, for instance. But with that low sense, well, they can potentially blame themselves. Again, maybe they're not seeing their part, or maybe even others' parts within that. And they tend to give up quite easily as well. Tried that, never going to work. Never mind, let's move into something else. So they'll just give up. The next one, of course, and the final one is confidence. And this is something, as you guys were talking earlier in chat just a few moments ago, I was writing things down here. That imposter syndrome came up quite a few times from several people. I think it was Sarah. I think Sarah also mentioned about empowering others, etc. I think asking for help as well. I think Heidi mentioned, and it's having that confidence to be able to do that. And confidence in own abilities. Sometimes we wear masks, and that's okay to wear a mask. But sometimes that has a real big impact on us. So think now to emotional control. If we're not confident in our own abilities, how's that impacting our emotions? What's going on for us? But then if we are confident, it's a fine line though. We don't want to come across as arrogant, but to be confident and to say, actually, I'm pretty good at that, but you're pretty good at that. And again, that's back down to that self-awareness. Interpersonal confidence is how you respond and work well with others. Now, that individual that may well be in the meeting that doesn't necessarily speak up, for instance, they may have quite low interpersonal confidence. So when we start to have a look at both of these, I'll stay with the interpersonal for just a second. Somebody with high, they'll stand their ground when challenged. They'll have a good case because they'll recognise and they'll be self-assured. So actually to be able to speak up and freely ask and answer questions because they're inquisitive. They want to learn from others as well. But somebody with a low sense of interpersonal confidence, like I said, they may well back down. They may not have that confidence in their own abilities to continue, reluctant maybe to engage with people. They may shrink a little and may not contribute in those meetings. But just very briefly go back to the confidence and abilities. Somebody high requires little or no external validation. Not saying they don't enjoy a nice pat on the back, well done, fantastic, you've done a brilliant job there. But of course, they're happy to engage in discussion, or even if it takes them into the unknown, because we've no idea what might be out there. It might be the next chapter in our career. Someone with low confidence and abilities, though, thinks others, like I've just said there, maybe reluctant to express their view. Now, what we're showing you here is that STEM report, and this is an actual STEM report. So as you start to look down at the very top section here, the overall mental toughness is a 7. Which is actually just an average score. 68% of the population scores between a 4 and a 7. So somebody that would be deemed as mentally sensitive would be a 1, 2, or a 3. And somebody that would be deemed as mentally or more mentally tough can be an 8, 9 or 10. Now that doesn't always mean good, because if you're mentally tough with low self-awareness, that isn't a great cocktail, because you could be very, very blinkered, for instance. You may not necessarily recognise the impact that you're having around you, and you could potentially be very dogmatic. However, look at the scoring here for emotional control, for instance, with a 3, and that positive learning orientator is a 2. So what is this individual high risk orientation of a 10? Low learning orientator. They're not learning from the mistakes. They're taking big risks. They're not learning from them. And look at the impact here on their emotional control. Maybe they are not seeing the part that they are playing in them taking risks and the impact that that's having on other areas. And this is the detail, the level of detail that the MTQ Plus allows us to drill down into. So as a coach, as a mentor, it's a fabulous tool to have a look inside that person's mind to see exactly what's going on. And I have no doubt a lot of you will be very familiar. I know certainly Andy's very familiar with the book Coaching for Performance by John Whitmore. And this is one of the quotes from there. Coaching is unlocking people's potential to maximize their own performance. It's helping them learn rather than teaching them. So we've got a great opportunity to use this from a coaching perspective to develop their self-awareness and to develop their mental toughness. So I'm now going to hand back over to Erica, who is going to, I think, hand over to Andy.
Brilliant, Sam. Thank you so much. And guys, it'd be good to get your thoughts and reflections in the chat as we're talking about this as well. What has Sam shared with you today, or what have I shared with you, what Sarah shared with you so far, that's starting to strike a chord? So let's get your reflection hats on. It'd be really good to get that. Yeah, thank you, Deborah, starting with us already. Great insight, fabulous, thank you. We're now going to introduce you to Mr. Andy Boson, who is the HR Director of Bostik. Andy is going to share with you his experience of going through the Coaching with Purpose programme, and particularly the 4 C's and the mental toughness, why Andy was interested in this programme, why did it stand out for him amongst the plethora of interventions that are available in the market, and the impact that it's had on him and Bostik at this time. So Andy, if you're there, over to you, please.
Where have you got that picture from? Where have you got that? I think I probably shared it with you, didn't I? So, hi, yeah, I'm still terrified from the course, to be fair. But Erica and Sam have done an amazing job working with me in the last 3 or 4 months. Everything that's been mentioned today has just resonated so much with the journey I've been on, and also where I want to take Bostik to. And it's really had a profound effect on what I want to do with the organisation going forwards. And Bostik context, it's 500 people manufacturing in the UK, 6-7 sites. So it's a really nice size. It's not so big that it takes forever to get things done, but obviously you've got to have disciplines, processes, all the good stuff you'd expect within HR within the business. My background is in HR. I think some of you may know that. I've been in HR just under 5 years. My background is commercial, and I came into HR to try and make a difference and support the business on its journey to developing its people and its culture, amongst other things. But what I really found brilliant about this is it's another tool that you can help assess yourself against. You can get an understanding of where you are. It made me think a huge amount about where I'd got strengths and areas for development in my profile and the STEM report that came back. And then when you link that into coaching, and particularly the pillars of coaching around self-awareness, whether you refer to it as accountability or responsibility, it becomes a self-fulfilling circle, because you start to become more aware of who you are, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve. And in doing that, you have a better understanding of the people around you, the teams that you're working with that report directly to you, the challenges they face, and you start to think in a more considerate way. And that helps you understand. And if you understand more, you can help to influence and develop more. And that's something that I've really started to see within the organisation, just by subtly bringing the coaching interventions to colleagues within the business, with people that I'm working with on a one-to-one basis towards gaining my qualifications. And then it links another level for me into L&D, which if I can develop the managers of the business so that they can become more self-aware, they can develop their coaching skills, they can become more mentally resilient in the with the amount of changes that we face, not just today, but we will in the future. Externally as the business, in Bostik we've got huge challenges coming in the future, not just around Brexit, but around some of the chemicals we use, some of the industries we play in, how they're going to react in the future as well. So there's lots of change for us in the future that we don't necessarily know how that's going to play today, but we know something will happen. So lining managers up and key people to consider that and see that as an opportunity is something that we're missing within our L&D function today. So that's something we're going to bring with the support of Erica and Sam and the courses that that we're going to work on over the next year or so. So that again helps the business move forwards. But it's helped me develop my skills, and I believe that my team are responding in a better way, in a different way to me. We are developing more as a business because of that as well. So I'm developing self, which is helping develop team, which is helping develop organization. And that's that golden line which goes through the whole organization in terms of individual objectives and goals, which if you're aligned to, you've got a fighting chance. And this course will help continue to develop that within Bostik and support the managers on their journeys. And that's going to have a big impact on the performance of the business over the next 2 to 3 years. And I'm really excited about being able to bring that to the managers of the business, 40 or 50 managers, and then key staff beyond that, the high performers and other bits and pieces. So that's the kind of journey that I'm going on, and the business is going on at the moment. And I'm excited about where that's going to go over the next couple of years for Bostik in the UK and beyond. I hope that's done justice to the work that I've had with Erica and Sam, and they see that. But it's been really impressive. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Andy, and that's very kind. And you and the team have put a huge amount of work into this, so the credit is yours. What I'm keen, and I think what perhaps the team might want to know is, there's a huge amount of coaching interventions out there. There's a lot of L&D support. There's a lot of places you can go to get this support. What difference did mental toughness, or the MTQ in particular, make for you compared to perhaps thinking about going on a coaching course that didn't have that factor in it?
It brings another level of I guess right now reality. People have said earlier, there's so much pressure out in the world right now. There's so much challenges that we face, and understanding how you react in that environment. And I like the comment earlier about resilience being more of a reactive piece and mental toughness being more proactive. I completely agree with that. It's then that mindset to think about that in a positive way, be able to understand it, break it down, and then think about how you're going to react to that. It also allows, I find, when you come into the coaching piece about working with teams, with dependent teams and interdependent teams, it allows you then to reach out and also have conversations and include other people within that, so that you can find a solution to that challenge that you face, rather than letting the train hit. And that's been huge for me, because I think we've all said in HR, if every day there is a new question, a new challenge, a new what if, the speed of change, the frequency of change that we're facing has been profound. I imagine everyone here would say this year has been their most challenging or demanding year in their working lives. And I hope I don't have another one quite like this. However, I've learned a lot about me in this. We're all doing that for different reasons, but I've learned a lot about me in that period of time, and the mental toughness made me become more aware of that. It's okay, and then how do you react and move forwards and address that? And then that links beautifully into self-awareness, which comes back to the coaching piece, and then you start to think about that and reflect on that. So that's where it's really helped me, Erica. I see that as another layer that comes beyond just a coaching qualification.
Thank you, Andy. I think you've articulated that beautifully, and certainly from the heart. So really appreciate your candidness there, and it's great to see some of your reflections coming through, and so thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. So that's Andy's kindly shared his story there from Bostik, and it's part way through the story for all of us is always there. We're kind of, like Andy says, facing that new thing that's happening all the time. Yodel is another example of a company that has embraced the concept of mental toughness in their own coaching programs, development programs, taking a set of managers, and you can see the time difference between T1 and T2 on that graph there shows us an increase in pretty much every part of the STEM, every part of the personality development, the mental toughness was supported through that coaching program that we talked about. And it's a psychometric, it's a measure. So what we tend to do is we take a before and an afterwards, and we can look at the distance traveled, and that's what you're looking at right here for the Yodel management team. And very much aligned it to key capabilities and also wins that they were having in the business as well. So there's some good data. We talk a lot about people analytics and Peer Genius, some good data that sits behind us. So in the last couple of minutes, we're just very quickly going to share with you what the Coaching with Purpose workshop covers, and Sam and I will do this between us as well. There's some available dates in January and February if you're interested, and of course learning some more about the program, we're happy to share the brochure is part of what's going on as well. So Sam, do you want to give us a bit of an overview of Coaching with Purpose? I know we've got a lot around the actual interventions people are doing, the coaching in the program, which is really important as well.
Yeah, it is. We use the psychometrics. We actually use two. We use the mental toughness, the MTQ plus. So you would complete a questionnaire beforehand and a questionnaire after you've been through the whole process of the actual training program, which takes between 3 to 4 months. So what we're looking for there is distance travel to see what has been developed and how you've utilized and used those particular reports as well. And that is provided obviously as part of the workshop. There's also another psychometric measure called the ILM-72, which is a leadership profiling tool, which we also use and we can use for leaders leaders, if they have teams, for instance, within the business. That's another measure that we also use. If we just go to the next slide, we've got observed coaching interventions. Again, we have an observed coaching session right at the very beginning before we go through any of the content, before we go through any of the upskilling, see where you're at now. And we have an also base level assessment as well to do for that. And then we also do a second coaching intervention, again with the whole group observing, once we've been through the content and the stuff, if you like, and give you guys an opportunity then to actually have a go and sort of try that new pair of shoes on, if you like, for size, shall we say. The next one, though, I mean, these are just a very, very high level. We then take a kind of step back. We look at the preparation for coaching. How do we get ourselves into that right place for those coaching interventions? Have we read through the MTQ report for that particular individual? How well do we prepare, for instance? Because I know certainly sometimes as a manager, I was quite guilty of going into one-to-one meetings. There's my piece of paper, right? Let's just go for it for an hour. Well, actually, how useful really was that, and how much on the coachee's agenda was that as well? So we have a look at the preparation. Also, coaching online compared to face-to-face. Well, we have a very different world now all of a sudden. Can we coach effectively online? Absolutely, yes, we can. And that's something that we also discuss on how it is that we can actually bring our coaching sessions to life in this environment. How exactly it is that we can do that, certainly in comparable to face-to-face, that's maybe having more remote teams at the moment. We also look at things like communication styles, so flex up, flex down to get the best out of our coaches, but to get the best out of ourselves as well, and how we can speak the same language. Also powerful questioning. Now, whether you're in sales, whether you're in leadership, whether you're in any role, facilitation, powerful questioning and compassionate listening are two key, incredibly underrated skills. We focus a lot of time on both of those within the workshop, and the difference between the first coaching intervention and the second coaching intervention is sometimes incredible. So huge difference there. We also use the GROW model. You may well be very familiar with the coaching model GROW. We use that, and I've also used GROW with sales teams, but we also use GROW as a tool for ourselves. It's not just about the coachee. We challenge limiting beliefs, and this is one of the parts that in module 3 we start to get a little bit of like, oh, it starts to feel a little bit gripey here, because we're challenging those limiting beliefs of ourselves, and of course we're getting skills to challenge those limiting beliefs within our coachees as well, and have those really granular conversations And this is a quote from me. When are you going to stop dancing around the daisies and grasp the nettle? I don't know how many leadership programs I've delivered down the years where they just dance around that individual that doesn't perform correctly and they never really find out why. Let's put them on a pip, they'll perform better. Brilliant, get them off a pip and they don't. What's going on for that individual? And that's exactly part of the program that we look at. The EMCC accreditation, well, why did I choose the EMCC to go through this particular and to run alongside this particular workshop? It's the gold standard of coaching and mentoring. It blends the two together. Sometimes you may well be in a coaching intervention and you may all of a sudden need your mentor hat on for a little while. You may then want to go back to your coaching. You might decide that this individual needs a bit of training. It's a real fluid way of having 8 really robust competencies that you can really take a look at yourself and improve your coaching practice, which internally improves the coachee's experience of coaching as well. I suppose a question to ask here is how many people in your organisation actively ask for coaching now? And this is exactly where we want to get people to. They want that coaching because it's such an enlightening experience to them. And that's exactly why I chose the EMCC, because it's such a fluid model. Like Erica mentioned earlier, we do have some dates, and that's pretty much the structure of the workshops. We've got some dates, but I'll be throwing out dates for the rest of the year as well. These are the open programs. We also do in-house programs as well, but these are the open programs that we have dates available for at the moment. There's one question, though, that I do get asked an awful lot. What if I've coached for many years? Can I document my experience and put it towards my accreditation? Absolutely. Yes, you can. Coaching accreditations sometimes are seen as quite stuffy and quite difficult. I've tried to make it as simple as I possibly can, the way I've designed the program. And absolutely, I want you to bring all of your skills to the party and evidence all of that fantastic stuff that you've been doing previously to, of course, then achieve that accreditation for you guys as well. So the final slide is, what questions do you have? So you have me here, you have Erica, you have Sarah, you have Andy here who can take your questions.
Thank you, Sam. If there are any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. Sarah's asked, do you need any prior coaching experience at all? Sarah, I think that's a great question. I'm going to let Sam answer that one, if that's okay.
Really great question. All of the cohorts that I've gone through this program previously have been a real mixed bag. In the last cohort, we had somebody with no coaching experience. They had a little bit of meetings, they'd done a little bit, couple of one-to-ones, but would they have said they were coaching? No. And yet we had somebody that's coached sales teams for 30 years. So I think that very probably answers your question. No, not at all. It's pitched at any level, especially with it being a foundation program. And of course, you utilize, as any facilitator would, you utilize the experience in the room, but then fresh set of eyes of somebody with no prior coaching experience in comparison to somebody with 30 years. It was very interesting how that dynamic developed, shall we say, throughout that workshop. So it was really interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Brilliant. Well, that's great then. So thank you very much, Erica, Sam,
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Andy.
Really brilliant. So just a question that's coming from Deborah. Do you provide individual HRD coaching, and what is the size of the cohort that's on the workshop? So thanks very much, Deborah.
Do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Sam.
The size of the cohorts, we can run up to 12 in each cohort, only because of the coaching interventions, and it's a learning event. It is not a webinar. It's highly interactive events that keep the, shall we say, the delegates very busy throughout those workshops. So yeah, we run up to 12 on each cohort. And do you provide HRD coaching? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we certainly do. We also provide supervision, which is something very important. So in other words, you're coaching the coach after the interventions in regards to improving their particular coaching practice as well.
Yeah, brilliant. So if anybody is interested, then obviously Erica's just dropped her email address in there as well. You've got all of our LinkedIn details as well. So if you want any further information, then just get in touch. I think there was one more question in there. That is the NTQ plus valuable for individuals or best for larger organisations?
Either. It's a fantastic tool. You can have 3 reports sent to you. You have an assessor's report, which can be used for recruitment, interestingly. You have a development report, which is for an individual. The narration's just slightly different. And you also have the coaching report. So the coaching sessions would get that one as well. So it's actually for either, Rachel, but that is a very, very good question. It certainly is. And I think there was one other question from Michelle. Do you provide MTQ assessments as standalone? Yes, we do.
Yeah, okay. Brilliant. So there's nothing you don't do, which is brilliant. The final thing that I wanted to say as well, that it is okay not to be okay as well, and admit that.
Yeah.
But you've got the support there as well, so you're not alone in that. So lean on the Peer Genius Network for what you need, and hopefully this sort of gives you some support as well, to like help yourself, to help your organisations. And to really sort of reflect on, like you said, our own oxygen masks, which is really important at the moment. So thank you to everyone that's really engaged in today's session. Like I said to you, it's been brilliant designed in that way. So this gives you a taster of what Erica and Sam's training delivery is online as well. So it's not just this programme that they run as well. They also do brilliant facilitation for that online delivery as well. And you can see the engagement that we've got from today. So imagine that in your organisations as well. So thank you very much, Sam, Erica, and Andy, especially as well. So thanks very much for sharing your insight. Always great to be working with you. And I haven't said any jokes about sticking at it either.
Yeah.
You had to come at some point.
Until then.
You held back right to the last minutes there. Well done.
Hilarious.
You know, I couldn't have ended on anything better, could I? But no, thank you everyone for today.
Go and get your blue tap. Go buy blue tap. Go buy blue tap.
Yeah, go and buy some blue tap now. Brilliant. Well, thanks very much, everybody. Always a pleasure to engage with you online. And next week we'll be back with Dennis. We're talking technology, and also on the Thursday with Simon Robinson, David Sillitoe, and Sam Higgins as well, giving us an employment law update. So a busy week next week and coming out of lockdown. Yeah. I'm really excited. So we'll see you next time. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for attending.